50 cents. That was all it took for Annabelle Cartwright to change her life forever, though no one in that dusty auction yard believed it at the time. The old windmill stood forgotten, its frozen blades slicing against the sky like jagged reminders of wasted effort. When the auctioneer slammed his gavel and declared it sold, the crowd chuckled under their breath, pitying the widow who had just wasted her last coins on a relic that most men said wasn't worth the lumber it was built from. But Annabelle wasn't bidding on scraps. She had seen something no one else noticed, a strange symbol carved into the base of the windmill, identical to the mark on a deed her late husband had hidden before his death. The connection hit her like lightning. This wasn't a meaningless purchase. It was a thread to something Thomas had discovered but never spoken of. As she stepped forward to claim her prize, Marcus Thornfield, the wealthiest man in the territory and her late husband's former rival, smirked from across the crowd. His eyes said everything. He knew she had stumbled into something dangerous. And when he approached her after the sale, warning that the windmill was cursed and whispering that a widow had no business restoring what stronger men had abandoned, Annabelle realized two things at once. Thornfield wanted this windmill for himself, and whatever secret it held was far greater than its broken wood. She clutched the deed tighter and answered with steady defiance. "I don't believe in curses. I believe in hard work." What she didn't yet know was that her husband had already left her the keys to a hidden world, buried deep beneath the earth, where secrets worth $22 million waited to be uncovered. The next morning, Annabelle returned to the windmill with her late husband's battered toolbox in hand and a determination that weighed heavier than iron. She studied the deed by lamplight all night, only to find confusing details, strange ownership transfers, vague dates, and even a second deed signed years earlier by Thomas himself. Why had he kept that from her? Standing before the windmill in daylight, she noticed something she'd missed at the auction. The structure was not as abandoned as it seemed. Its wood had been oiled recently, the iron fixtures cleaned of rust. Someone had been maintaining this place. Her pulse quickened as she traced her fingers over the carved symbol again, a circle with 3 outward lines like a sun, repeated on several beams. She wasn't alone in her thoughts for long. Samuel Cross, a local carpenter known for his quiet respect, appeared at her side. He had always treated her with dignity, unlike most men since Thomas's death. "Interesting purchase yesterday," he said, his voice low. "Most folks thought Thornfield would get it. He's been asking questions about this property for months." Annabelle's heart tightened. Thomas never mentioned this place, yet here was proof he had been tied to it. Samuel pointed out fresh sealant on the joints, even a new iron lock on the door. Clearly, someone cared for this windmill, someone who didn't want it falling apart. Annabelle asked how one might open such a lock, and Samuel smiled knowingly, producing a small tool from his belt. Within moments, the lock surrendered, the hinges creaked, and a door swung open to reveal a darkness that seemed too deep for the modest structure above. A rush of air carried the scent of oil and recently burned candles. Someone hadn't just maintained this windmill, someone had been living here. Inside, the space defied her expectations. Instead of dust and cobwebs, Annabelle found a neatly arranged room with a cot, fresh apple cores, stacked books, and swept floors. This wasn't the shelter of a drifter. It was the carefully curated space of someone who belonged here. Then her eyes fell on a book that made her breath stop, Engineering Principles of Mill Construction, authored by none other than her late husband, Thomas Cartwright. She opened it to find his handwriting, filling the margins with notes, calculations, and drawings. One sketch in particular caught her eye, the same symbol carved into the beams outside. Before she could process it fully, Samuel called her over to a panel in the wall so perfectly concealed it was almost invisible. Behind it, a hidden staircase descended into the earth. Lantern in hand, Annabelle followed Samuel into the darkness. The steps were too precise, too carefully cut to be random. At the bottom, they stepped into a cavernous chamber carved into the ground. It was vast, supported with timber and lined with shelves holding gold artifacts, jewelry, religious relics, ornate pieces, all carefully labeled. Her knees buckled when she saw the numbers on the tags. $22 million worth of treasure hidden in the earth beneath her 50-cent windmill. The enormity of the discovery was overwhelming, but before she could celebrate, the sound of boots thundered D. Down the stairs, Marcus Thornfield's voice echoed coldly through the chamber, calling her name. He hadn't just suspected something, he knew, and he hadn't come alone. Thornfield descended with 2 armed men, his smug expression confirming that he had been waiting for this moment. He produced a document, claiming Thomas had defaulted on debts 3 years earlier, transferring the property to him. Annabelle refused to believe it, but Thornfield explained that her auction win had merely been a way for her to uncover what he already knew existed. He admitted his men had maintained the windmill, waiting for the right time. Samuel accused him of using the property, and Thornfield didn't deny it. Then came the most chilling revelation. Thomas hadn't died in an accident. He had been silenced because of what he uncovered. Annabelle's rage threatened to overwhelm her, but before she could speak, another voice joined the scene. Slow, deliberate clapping echoed down the stairs. Judge William Hayes, a man Annabelle had trusted for years, the very man who officiated her wedding and guided her through widowhood, appeared in the lantern light. The betrayal hit like a blade to the heart. Hayes revealed he had been working with Thornfield all along, forging property records and orchestrating the auction. They demanded Annabelle sign papers transferring the land back for a pittance, threatening Samuel's life if she refused. She studied the forged document carefully, noticing the inconsistencies in handwriting and ink. And with sharp defiance, she declared the papers fraudulent. Her voice rang against the chamber walls. "Every deed you've shown me is a forgery. The law won't protect you, it will hang you." Thornfield snarled, but for the first time, hesitation clouded his confidence. Annabelle had turned the trap back on them, but she still didn't know how she would get out alive. As tension mounted, hooves thundered above ground and heavy boots descended the stairs once more. This time they carried the measured authority of law. Sheriff Morrison entered with deputies, eyes scanning the chamber full of gold, forged papers, and armed conspirators. His arrival was no coincidence. Annabelle had secretly sent word after the auction, suspecting fraud, and Morrison had been investigating Thornfield and Hayes for months. Seeing them here with stolen treasure confirmed everything. The sheriff announced the gold was stolen government reserve funds that had vanished during a territorial transition 3 years earlier. Annabelle, voice steady despite her pounding heart, accused Thornfield and Hayes of threatening her and murdering Thomas. Hayes tried to spin lies, but Morrison revealed he already had proof of multiple forged deeds, many signed in Hayes's own hand. Thornfield sputtered that they were respected men, but Morrison cut him off cold. "You were respected. Now you're criminals." Deputies moved in, disarming Thornfield's men. Relief washed over Annabelle as Samuel stepped closer, whispering, "How long have you known?" She confessed she had always suspected Thomas's death wasn't accidental, and now, with Morrison's help, she had proof. Her husband hadn't stumbled blindly onto treasure. He had been investigating corruption, and it had cost him his life. And now, justice was about to fall on the very men who had thought themselves untouchable. Morrison explained the reality with calm authority. The treasure would return to the territorial government, but by law Annabelle was entitled to a 25% recovery fee. $5.5 million, wealth beyond anything she had ever dreamed. The men who conspired against her were dragged away in chains, and Annabelle was left standing in the chamber that had held not just treasure, but the truth about her husband's courage. 6 months later, the windmill stood tall and restored, its blades turning smoothly in the breeze, no longer a forgotten relic but a symbol of triumph. Annabelle had used her newfound wealth to build a grain mill serving 3 territories. She converted the underground chamber into a secure records vault, protecting her business. Samuel became her partner, their bond built on trust and mutual respect, not pity or condescension. Thornfield and Hayes rotted in prison, their power broken. Annabelle's name, once whispered with pity, was now spoken with admiration. She had transformed from a widow mocked at an auction into one of the wealthiest, most respected women in the territory. Yet, when asked what victory mattered most, she didn't point to her fortune. She pointed to the simple truth. She had proven that a woman alone could not only survive, but rise, thrive, and outwit the very men who had tried to bury her. Annabelle's fortune allowed her to expand her vision further. She funded irrigation projects, signed contracts with officials who now treated her with respect, and built a network of mills that fed communities across the frontier. Where once men had mocked her, they now sought her partnership. But Annabelle never forgot the auction yard where she had raised her hand against ridicule and disbelief. 50 cents had bought her more than a windmill. It had bought her freedom, power, and the chance to show others that strength wasn't given, it was claimed. Every rotation of her restored blades was a reminder that her husband's death had not been in vain, that corruption had been exposed, and that courage could rewrite destiny. For the first time since Thomas's passing, Annabelle could walk her land with pride, no longer haunted by whispers of helplessness. She had become a force of nature herself, unstoppable as the wind that drove her mill. And so Annabelle Cartwright's story became legend. The widow who bought a worthless windmill for 50 cents and uncovered a $22 million chamber beneath it, exposing the greatest corruption scandal her territory had ever seen. But beyond the gold and beyond the scandal, her true victory was proving that grit, courage, and intelligence can topple even the most powerful enemies. It's a reminder that sometimes, what the world calls worthless hides the greatest treasures, and those treasures are claimed not by luck, but by the fearless. If you enjoyed this incredible tale of hidden fortune, betrayal, and triumph, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe right now so you never miss the next story. Every week we bring you gripping, true-to-life narratives from the American frontier and beyond. Stories of resilience, courage, and discovery that will keep you hooked from the very first word. And if you'd like to support our channel and help us bring you more of these unforgettable tales, consider leaving a super thanks or sharing this video with a friend. Your support helps us keep these stories alive for audiences who crave adventure, inspiration, and a reminder that even in the darkest times, light can be found.